Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Laurie, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started!
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I'm your host, Laurie, and I am really excited for today's guests. So if you've been a long-time listener of our show, you've definitely heard our guest on before because she's been on our program, maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. Time is just flying by. We'll link to it. And I've been a guest on her show. We are kind of colleagues in this crazy industry. She's more on the productivity side, specifically helping moms with their schedules. She's now, since our last conversation, she's now an author, which is amazing. She has a book out called The 15-Minute Formula, which we are going to talk about. And I remember having conversations with Cara offline with her talking about this idea to write a book, and here it is, birthed in the wild. So we're going to talk all about that journey, and really just talk about busy seasons of life. You know, we were talking about our own personal things that are going on in us, and I don't care how organized you are with your space. We all have things that come up unexpectedly, and those things impact our mental load, our physical space, our ability to stay focused or to procrastinate, and all the things. And I think this is something that, again, it doesn't matter how organized or how productive you are, we all experience this. So what do we do about it? What are some ways that we can have some grace for ourselves? What are some strategies that we can put into play so that when we do finally things start to calm down and we do have to kind of get back into our routines, how do we make that transition happen? So all of this and more. So I'm going to be bringing out my friend, Cara Harvey, out to the show. A lot of you might know her. She also, in addition to being a productivity expert and a coach for moms, she runs this incredible virtual summit that she's been doing. I want to say 5 years, but it might be, I'm not sure of that timeline. And she gets speakers. I was on it last year. I was one of her speakers last year. And when I tell you, she gets the most amazing, I'm not saying that about myself, but she gets the most amazing speakers from all walks of life. And they're all, well, I don't know if all of them, but most of them are moms. They're these women entrepreneurs. So aside from the content being so incredible, just the fact that it's so inspiring and empowering to women entrepreneurs is just, I just love everything about it. So she just has her hand in so many different things. And geographically, we live near each other, although we never get together, which I'm hoping this summer we can change. So enough about her. Without further ado, I'm going to bring my friend Cara Harvey out to the show and let you experience her for yourself. So welcome to the show, Cara, or welcome back to the show.
Yeah, Laurie, do you just want to follow me around and say nice things about me? Because that was the nicest intro ever.
Oh, well, you know what?
Thank you.
Well, it's true. It's all true. It's all well-deserved. And I'm really, and I said this to you offline, because your book's been out for more than a hot second. And I've been wanting to get you on our schedules just haven't aligned. So tell everybody, obviously I sung your praises, but just give them the elevator pitch version of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. And I want to start with a thank you to you though, Laurie, because we got on a Zoom when I was thinking about writing the book and you let me pick your brain on all things book writing. And that was one of the catalysts for me starting the book. So I have to say thank you because you were part of my research phase. And maybe we'll talk a little about that today when we talk about my learn, plan, do concept. But you were part of my learn was to talk to people who have been there. So thank you, because you were a part of it when it was this little kind of thought maybe in my head type of thing.
You are more than welcome. And I think this is so important for so many women, again, whether it's writing a book, opening a store, starting a business, we have these things that nag at us, and, I'm sure you'll get into this, but like, how do we actually take that and implement it? And how do we give it life? Because a lot of times people are embarrassed. They're like, oh, I couldn't do that, or this seems so far-fetched, or fill in the blank. And we tell ourselves just these fake lies and make excuses. Not that there aren't real obstacles, time, money, opportunity, all these things that are challenges. But if you have a passion and a dream to do something, I think, you're living proof, and I'm living proof that you can make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, that is the struggle, right? Like that is the lie we tell ourselves. And honestly, that was the lie I told myself. So to just cliff notes a little bit about how I got to this space 5 years, and you were right on all your timelines.
Oh, okay.
5 years later. Yeah. I was like, you've really read my bio. Like we know each other like that. So yeah, I'm Cara. I'm a mom of a 4, a 6, and a 15-year-old. And I am a former burnt out school teacher turned entrepreneur. And it came like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs come accidentally. I didn't mean to be sitting here. I loved my job. But at some point, I had to decide that I loved myself more because I was so burnt out. I was working 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., going in on the weekends, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I wound up telling my husband, I think I want to leave teaching, something I wanted to do since I was 7. And he's so supportive. And he was like, cool, but we have to make money. So what are you going to do? And I got into network marketing. I was making enough for a product, and I thought maybe this could be it. And so I was full-time in network marketing for 3 years. And let me tell you, on the outside, it looked really good. I have this 6-figure business and 250 people on my team, like all the things you're supposed to do. But on the inside, I was burnt out because I was doing all the things I had done teaching that burnt me out, like inbox zero, carrying my laptop everywhere. Like it was just this hustle that I knew didn't feel aligned. And so right around 3 years in, I thought there's got to be something different. And my son, who's now 4, I guess he was 3 weeks old, I bought a domain at 3 a.m., nursing him over a boppy pillow. And I thought, let me see if I can figure this out as a blogger. Like that was my main thing. Like maybe I can do something. And fast forward, I found my groove in productivity and time management. And what really stood out for me was when I realized that the more moms that I helped, the more they were having the same struggle, the guilt over not doing enough, the feeling like they had to do everything and burning themselves out. And then society telling us that you're only worthy if you show up in 900 different ways. And so my approach is what I call productivity-based priority. And it's not about guilt and shame. It's actually about intentionality and grace. And I find that by backing up and actually putting less on your plate, which is really the concept of all of my frameworks, the moms I work with get more things done because they're not only taking small micro wins, but they're growing their confidence again. Hey, I can show up for myself. So going back to what you're saying about like what we think, our brain tells us, Laurie, you've had that goal, but every time you start it, you stop. You think you can do this, but you can't. And so our brain's trying to protect us. It's trying to keep us safe. And so instead of taking any action, we take none because we're so fearful. And this framework that I've been able to teach now to thousands of women helps them make small moves. And they'll always be like, but Cara, it's going to take forever. And I say like, but how's it going so far? Like trying to do everything at once isn't working. It allows them to grow the confidence and the ability to say, I can show up for myself, and they do more than they've ever have because they're trying to do less.
I love it. And I want to also come back to one of the things that you said, because I think this is so important, is you, and we've all present company included, fallen into this trap. So you changed the environment. You were still doing the same behavior, following the same practices, but you moved from a classroom to your house. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you may have eliminated a commute. You know what I mean? You may not have had to get dressed up and, but you were just changing the environment. You didn't change your behavior. You didn't change your habits. The practices that you were doing, that hustle, grind, move, whatever we told ourselves of, this is how you get to the air quote finish line, or this is how you get to X, whatever that is. You didn't change that. You just changed the scenery. And you just changed, okay, instead of me teaching, kids, second graders, now I'm teaching other women how to do something, but so I think so many of us say, we try these things, we fail. I've tried 10 different things and I fail. And, in the organizing space, I could say the same thing. People could say, I bought every bin, basket, container on the market and it's not solving my problem. Well, you're still buying, you're still buying more than space that you have. So it doesn't matter what you're, it's not the bin that's going to solve the problem. It's, you have to look at what are the patterns of behavior. And I love that that's what you do, because you recognize me just putting myself in a new space wasn't solving my problem, wasn't getting me any closer to that peace, happiness, whatever that I was really looking for.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I thought that you were a successful person if you worked longer hours. If I stayed, like, I like to be the last one at school because I thought it made me look like I was a better teacher. Like, I'll be honest. Like,
oh my God, that's so Enneagram 3 of you.
It
That's
very
so
100%
that's
is.
so Enneagram 3 of you.
That it is. I was like, I like that I opened the building. Like, I like that I do that because it makes me look important, because I had tied so much of my worth into what I accomplished. And that was my rinse and repeat. Like, yes, it's like kind of how I'm wired, but it's also been the story that's been conditioned in my life since I was a kid, right? Like, right. I've always been this person. And when people are saying, oh, you're so great because you're doing this, thanks for volunteering, you, in your brain, you think this is the only way to live. And you use it as, and you know this, right? Like, people use it as a crutch. And that's what I did. I used that, my threeness, as a crutch to burn out and to hustle. Yes. And when I finally was like, aha, it can be different. Like, am I still the same person? Sure. But do I look at things differently? That's the key. It's not about, like, totally changing and having to become this person. Like, I talk to a lot of people who are like, I'm not a planner. I don't want to be structured. And I say, so don't be. It doesn't have to be you. Can you look at it differently? Can you create a different plan? Not about changing you, because a lot of times we fault ourselves. It's either my fault if I'm successful, or it's my fault if I fail. When in reality, I think it's your plan. Like, I think you just didn't make the plan that set you up for success. We have all these things that say, like, you just don't have enough willpower. Well, I think willpower is stupid, honestly. Yeah. It's a muscle you have to grow. And I think instead, stop blaming yourself and shaming yourself and saying, I'm flawed and all of these things, and say, how can I make a better plan that makes sense for my season right now so that I can see success and work with who I am and how I'm built.
I think for many of us, it's just, we take comfort in the devil that and it's, I've always been disorganized. My house has always been cluttered. So I'm just destined for it to be cluttered. I've always been, worked to the bone and surviving on 4 hours worth of sleep. And so we tell ourselves that this is how we're just destined to be. And that's just not true. Like, but the hard work is surrendering to changing this behavior and habit change, and saying, I'm going to actually forgo what's not been working and try something new and stick with it. So so you had this epiphany, and again, we'll link up to our older episode, but for people that are just now tuning in and just kind of curious, so you bought this domain, you started blogging, and at the time, like, was it just pretty much your own stories? Like, what was your content and how did it morph to where it is today?
Shoot, Laurie, it was a hot mess. I mean, I don't even know what I was writing. I was throwing spaghetti at a wall. And I was doing what everybody else was doing that looked successful. Oh, recipe roundups. Now, Laurie, I can't cook. I don't know what I'm doing here, right? But I was like, yeah, everyone else does recipe roundups. And my attitude was blog for traffic. And it wasn't help solve a problem for someone. And that was the game changer for me, when after a year of trying to do what I saw everybody else doing. And if you look at my site, like, we just got a rebrand. So we're relaunching a brand new site that's going to move. A Purpose Driven Mom will be where we put our podcast, but we'll have caraharvey.com finally. And it looks like so much better because we got rid of all the stuff that doesn't make sense. The stuff that I was just trying to do because I was trying to fit in what I thought it looked like. And like we know, when things become aligned, that's when the magic happens. And so it took me about a year and a half of that. And then I got a business coach. And that was when it changed for me, because I wasn't just staring at my business by myself. And I started to switch my mindset from, I'm just a mom with a laptop, which is all I thought I was, to I have an actual business that I can help people with. And I was trying to solve their problem. And when that light bulb went off in my head of find the problem and solve it, and lean into what I'm naturally inclined to, which is I'm a naturally organized and productive person, I thought, okay, boom, we can do it. And that's when things really started to take off. And I realized that so many of the things I was doing when it came to routines, that came from a mix of my own life experience. And also, I like to say, my teaching degree. So I'm certified in special education, I have my master's and stuff. So I'm thankful that I use that because I'm still paying off my loans, right? And I use that stuff that I do. And so if anyone knows about special ed, like I just say I write IEP goals for parents. Like I help them figure out how to make their own goals.
I
for
love that.
themselves.
Oh my
Because-
gosh.
Because that's what it is.
I love it. So, oh gosh. So, all right. So your business starts taking off. And there's also, I really am going to encourage everybody to go back and listen to the old show because we're not going to get into too much of that today, but like Cara shared her story, like you were hustling, you guys were in a lot of financial debt. You were working like at Barnes and Nobles at night and weekend, like you guys had like a redemption story in so many ways. You know, it wasn't like you just had this smooth sailing. And again, I'm not picking at anybody, but like when I started my business, yes, it was a leap of faith. Yes, it was a lot of work, but I had the luxury, and I say this all the time, like I had the luxury of Josh had a stable salary. We had benefits. We were financially stable. And yes, we relied on me generating money, but like if my business did not succeed, we would be okay. Like it wasn't live or breathe. Like you were in a different boat. And again, there's a lot of people out there that are listening that are, you know, struggling in a lot of different ways. And so I always want to reach out to people that like, you might have a rocky road, but it can be done because where you're talking to people like yourself and other guests that have said, I'm going to do this despite the odds. I'm going to try this and figure out. And I love again that you had that mind shift of how can I make this work for me to how can I serve other people? And and I think for anybody that's in a service-based business, whether you're selling a service, a digital product, whatever it is, when you are able to put your community, your audience, the people that you're serving, your customers first, and able to use your gifts to serve them, which is what you do. You found your sweet spot of like, I'm actually really good at this and I can teach people who are struggling how to do this. That's the secret sauce right there.
It. Yes. That feels good.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the 15-minute formula. How did it come about? What is it? And then we can kind of get into some nuts and bolts, like the overview of your framework that we can talk about.
Yeah. So when I had started, I had said, I had sat with Laurie and asked him questions because I didn't want to write a book. Like I had 0% interest ever in writing a book. It was not on my list at all. And I was struggling to find books for my own membership because a lot of the productivity books out there, they have this like super masculine energy and it's 5 a.m. and hustle. And it's just different. It's just different for us moms. And I thought, well, heck, maybe I'll write it. And it was actually at our summit last year. And you got caught up with everybody else, like sharing their big goals. And I was on live and I was like, I think I'll write a book next year. And I was like, why did I just say that? I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. And so for me, I remember like announcing it and thinking, okay, maybe in 2022, 2023, right? Like the book's a big project. And I said out loud to myself, I was like, God, if you want me to write a book, like send me a sign. And that was on a Friday. And on Monday, I got an email and it was from like an online mentor I had never met type of thing. But the subject line was, I want to help you write your book. And that was Mike Michalowicz, who wrote Profit First.
I'm like, I know the story because you were like, oh my gosh. And
because it was wild. It was wild to get that because he was doing this in-person workshop right in New Jersey, where my sister lives, same town. And I thought I have to apply. So 10 people got in because it was, right during COVID. And I got accepted and I went to this workshop and I left feeling like, I can potentially do this. I was like, I'm an author. I can figure it out. Let's go. And so once I had that idea, I actually used one of the strategies I alluded to before that I teach in the book called Learn, Plan, Do, because
I wrote that down. At some point during this call, we're going to talk about that.
Well, let me dive a little bit into it now because it's exactly what I did, because this is what we do, right? We get really excited. We really want to do stuff. And so we just jump into something, get overwhelmed, get burned out. And then it is like, cool, I'll work on it next year, right? Like that was cool, but like, I'm not going to fit this in right now. And so what I actually suggest everyone to do, take a step back and use Learn, Plan, Do specifically for goals and projects that you actually don't know the steps to. I teach a ton of ways of breaking your goals down depending on the type of goal, but this is for something you're like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to do this, but I want to do it. So the concept is, instead of jumping into the do, we take a pause and we move into 3 distinct phases. We start with learning. So for me, for the book, I was like, all right, I know I want to get this book out. I know nothing about writing a book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the month of May in learning phase, or maybe it was April. I was like in learning phase. And I'm just going to explore what this means. So I went to this workshop. I got on calls with my friends like Laurie, who have written books in all different ways, self, hybrid, and traditional. I got on calls with different agents. I talked to hybrid. Like I just researched.
It was a research. It was like you were doing research.
Exactly. Because I was like, I don't know where this path is going to take me, because what happens is we start on a goal and we think we know all the steps, but we know that as soon as we start, 900 steps pop up that we have no idea. I think about writing my blog. Like I get started and I'm like SEO and I'm like, what? And then you go down this rabbit hole and you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, learn Canva. And you're like, what? And then it stops us because we just get so overloaded. But if you pause and allow a learning phase. Now I said mine was like 4 to 6 weeks. It could be a week. It could be a quarter. It could be a year, whatever you want to do. Customize everything I talk about today for yourself and say, let me just back up and get a better overview. Then I can make a more strategic plan. And so I went into learning phase, and what I decided was I was going to self-publish, but I wanted to get a course that went along with it in a coaching program, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I went into this coaching program for self-published authors, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I moved into my plan phase. So what I did inside the plan phase was I looked at the course and I broke it down using my numerical goal system of how many lessons am I going to watch of this? I did a time inventory. How long does it take me to write 1,000 words? So I knew how many days a week I needed to write, because, as much as like a hotel for the weekend or a cabin in the woods sounds beautiful, I got 3 kids, right? Like this is not going to happen. So I knew that I had to fit my book into my life and my business, not the other way around, because that's when we get resentful. And so I spent about 2 weeks making this plan and breaking it down into chunks and figuring it out. And I said to myself, I know that if I can write this many words, I can actually finish writing in 4 months. And that's
you put your book out really fast. I was like, my book took me like 5 years to write because I had so many stops and starts.
Yeah.
And
it was idea to print in 9 months. Like it was my book baby, literally. But this is what happened. I planned out originally to write 3 days a week for 1 hour to 90 minutes. That was it. And I said, if I do this, and I made a very detailed outline. That was, everyone asks like that. And like my outline was so detailed that the writing, like once I started writing, I realized I had so much to say. And also I've taught this framework before in my courses. So I was like, okay,
sure,
we've got this. So that's where I started. And some days I did longer if I felt like it, but I always just said that will be enough. And I only did it 3 days a week because of this. I knew that along the path of writing the book, something was going to happen. I don't know what, like, we don't know what's going to happen, but life is going to throw me a curveball. So instead of planning 7 days a week, I know they say 21 days makes a habit, but listen, I'm not perfect. And like, even with a regular goal of like loading my dishwasher, some nights we get home from baseball and I don't want to do it. So I don't. Like, why do this to ourselves? I always say buffer time. So I left myself days of buffer for just me not to feel like doing something, which is okay, or for something to happen. And over the summer, actually, my life imploded. I left my church that I was at for like 7 years. My grandma passed away, and then my husband lost his job again. So from June to November, he was out of work. But Laurie, let me tell you, this time was so different because I had my business. Like, it was so different from the first time.
Yeah.
It just was a cool moment. So, but again, I just sat on a couch for 2 weeks, like, what is happening? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So when I kind of was ready to come back out of it, I readjusted the goal, and it went from 3 to 5 days. So now I was like, okay, I can still hit my 4 months, but I have to do 5 days a week. Okay. And I also kind of was able to jump back in because I had the plan. I wasn't sitting around like, where do I start again? I knew exactly where to go. And so I was able to get it out. And what was interesting was, so I said I had a book coach, love the dude, great guy, but he doesn't have kids. And so when I told him I finished the book by the end of the summer, he was like, awesome. This could be out like for Black Friday or Christmas or even September, like whatever. And I was like, pause. Just because I could do it does not mean I should. And I was like, could I hustle and get the cover and the edit? Could I do all that? Yeah, but I'd be stressed out. I'd have a sloppy product. And honestly, I know my mom, like my audience, like, especially in the holidays, she's not thinking about herself. I said, when she needs this book is the 3rd week in January, when all the goals she was so excited about have started to wane. And that's when the book came out. And he kept pushing, do it. And I kept telling him, no, friend, like, this is why my book is needed. Because that's the message that's so ingrained in us. And I'm glad I didn't rush it, because I didn't know anything about the other steps of the writing process.
Well, and not for nothing, if anybody's out there that's written a book, the writing part is like, once I thought, oh, this is going to be it's all the other stuff is super hard, or like talk about decisions that you don't know.
And the imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh. I thought the writing was going to be hardest for me because I don't identify as a writer. I had this block. I had this block about my writing, and it was the easiest because when I got to making decisions, it felt like so much pressure. Like, what if I pick the wrong cover? And then, having to approve every edit from my editor. I'm like, I don't know. You think the comma looks good there? Sure. Like, and even though I just finished recording the audiobook, it's coming out, fingers crossed, Mother's Day weekend. I've still found like a dozen mistakes because, like, even though I read it out loud like 4 times, I still found stuff I would have said differently. Now, perks of self-publishing, I'm going to go in and fix them before this week and whatever, but I still found them. So it was like, it's never going to be perfect, but I knew that if I had rushed it even more, oh my goodness, it would have felt so unaligned for me. And honestly, the opposite of what I teach. So I stood my ground on that, and it allowed me to make a plan that makes sense, set up a launch that makes sense. Like, it allowed it to feel so good instead of forced, which is what I think so many of our goals feel. They feel pushed and forced because life and society tells us if we're not going a million miles an hour, we're filling every line up in our planner, we're a failure.
Absolutely. And you don't enjoy any of the process. Right now, again, after our break, I want to talk about people that maybe have goals that aren't as like epic as I want to write a book. Like, what about people that are just have like everyday life challenges? How can that apply? So we're going to talk about that after the break. But again, you want to be able to also enjoy the process. And I think a lot of times, so for all my Enneagram geeks out there like us, so Cara's a 3, I'm an 8, and we're forward-thinking people. We're very much like forward-thinking people, future-focused. And when it comes to organization and productivity, that can serve us well because we're not intuitively people that resonate in the past and have to spend a lot of time going down memory lane. But the cautionary tale for our forward-thinking people is we can tend to move at the speed of light until we crash and burn, right? Like, we'll go until we hit a wall. And so taking the time to like work through this systematic strategy of your learn, plan, do allows you to like actually take stock of what's happening in that moment. Because so many times, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for myself is I'm so busy planning 4 steps ahead, I'm not even enjoying what's happening right now. And what's happening right now could be something that's really awesome, but I'm not taking the time to do that. And so I think just being able to slow this down and look at each phase of this process, very strategically kind of forces you to tap the brake.
Yep, completely.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Then we want to come back and I want to talk about applying the 15-minute formula. Again, diving a little bit deeper in, and then just talking about everyday moms that are just living their life, how it can help. So sit tight. All right, Cara. So the title, 15-minute formula. It's got a lot of buzz. I love it. It's catchy. And anybody that's watching us on YouTube, you could see behind Cara, the book is right there. Very interesting. Talk a little bit about, in addition to the learn, plan, do, like what is the premise behind the 15 minutes?
Sure. So I found that 15 minutes was enough time to convince my brain to get started. It was also enough time for me to scroll Instagram and put all of my goals off. And when I started to work with moms, one of the things that was holding them back was the starting. There's a saying I used to use when I taught English, and it was, it's the start that stops us, right? And it was just that getting that momentum going. And because we're juggling so many things, I realized that if we're able to use all the strategies that I teach, but really breaking our tasks down, having just 15 minutes, making small micro wins, you're able to get stuff done because it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do the whole thing, right? Like we think about, a decluttering example. If you were to tell a mom, like, go declutter your kitchen, like, yeah, right, I'm gonna stand there, I'm gonna look at stuff, right? But how can we break it down to be like, today I am going to look at like this one shelf of my pantry. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is we get one shelf done and 1 or 2 things is gonna happen. One is we stop and we can pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, great job. I'm really proud of you for like getting started. But more often than not, we've started to get momentum, we get excited and we want to keep going. And maybe we do 2 sections and then that's bonus and extra credit. And so that's kind of where it came from. But the 15-minute formula, it really starts with this vision setting of what you want. Because like I was saying before, when it comes to learn, plan, do, if we just jump into goals because we think we're supposed to have them and they don't make sense for the season of life we're in, we're going to get caught like, put on the brakes. I can't do this. And I think about seasonality in a few ways. So I teach a 4-season concept, but if we start with the basic season of motherhood, season of life you're in, season of work, and you look at it holistically, it'll be so easy for you to pick goals that make sense. So for example, for me, the first quarter of the year, and I say first quarter, but listen, when I'm talking quarters, 12 weeks, it's just a calendar, right? Like I don't care when it is. Monday's Monday, 12 weeks is whenever. So again, customize it. But my first quarter of the year is always the busiest because we have our summit. It's a big event. It takes a lot of work. I also had the book come out. So because I know this in advance, that quarter one is going to be a busy season for me with work, I always ask myself, what are some goals that I want to make that will support this? It does not make sense for me to put this other huge goal on my plate, but what about instead if I put a self-care goal? Because I know I'm not going to take care of myself, or a family goal because I'm going to be working extra hours. If you know that you have more time in the summer because everybody's home, maybe that's when you make your home improvement goals or your budgeting stuff so you can have money for activities in the summer. So first things first is asking yourself, one, what season of life am I in? And two, what seasons are coming? So I think about if somebody has like a newborn, right? Like their goals are, I just want to pee by myself. Like I'm not going to put a million things on, but what does life tell us? Society is like, no, but you have to bounce back and do all this other stuff. No, pause. I really just want to have some family goals. Maybe I want to have a meal prep goal during this time. Or if you're looking far in advance, this is what I did when I had my kids. I knew the baby was coming. So a month before, I spent like 2 hours and I made freezer meals. So I didn't have to worry about it, right? And when you forward think like that, when you look at like what's coming next, you can then allow yourself to prepare for it instead of, oh crud, my kid's birthday party's next week. I haven't thought about it at all. And now I'm jamming everything in, because this is what I find, Laurie, is that so many of us live in this reactive space in our lives. And I want to encourage people to live proactively instead. And it starts with vision. It starts with what's coming up in the next couple months. What can I do now? And then how can I plan for it? And then when you have that idea and you make those goals, you can kind of use these 4 seasons that I talk about to plan out your month. And so this was a game changer. I think you'll like this because we can connect it to Enneagram stuff too. Okay. Whenever I tell the examples, I always use Enneagram examples on this one. So we can run with it. So
I love it. You know that.
Yes. I was like, oh, she'll like love this one. 4 seasons. We default, like our personalities default to something. And I teach 4 strategic seasons: a season of push, a season of planning, a season of rest, and a season of fun.
I'm writing it down. Rest.
Yes.
What was the 4th one?
Fun. Yes. Which is, as a 3, not my jam. It is not my default, right? Like I do not like it. It is not for me. But I find if I am not strategic about this, I will default to one of those. So for me as a 3, I default to push like that. And I use push because I don't like the word hustle, but like, that's where I go. That's my safe space. That feels good to me. But if I default to push the entire month, I'm going to burn out. I'm going to be resentful and I won't do any of the other things. My husband is a 9. He defaults to rest. That's where he likes to be. But if he lives there, then all of the other things aren't happening. Right. Sure. So, think about you and your personality, and there's nothing wrong with it. This is the cool thing. You're going to default to any of it. You can customize throughout your month how much you need of that. So I know that if I have too much rest, I get squirrely and like I don't feel good. So instead, I know that I need to have more push to feel like fulfilled as a person, but I got to put the rest in. So look at the next month and ask yourself, do I have these 4 seasons represented that feel appropriate to me and at some point? So for me, my Monday through Thursday, that's my push. That's my push for work. That's when I'm doing all that stuff. Mostly the push for kids' activities and sports, like that feels fine to me. And I'm happy with the way our schedule is. Fridays are my plan day. So all my work meetings are my team. We have what I call thought catcher time, where we're catching up on stuff, buffer time for things, admin. I plan out, the meal plan for next week, the groceries, like that's what I do on that day. And that feels really good. Because I know some of us, like if you're maybe a 1, you might default to planning. Maybe all you're doing is planning until it looks perfect and then you don't do anything else. But I know for me, I need at least one day. And then I try to have my fun on Saturday, which isn't the whole day. I still am doing other things, but I try to make sure I have something fun in there for me, which again, I don't like to do. I have to make myself do it. And then I keep a little bit of rest on Sundays. And I have found for me, if I plan my week like that, or at least I have pockets of it inside based on what's happening, I feel so much less burnt out. And I feel like I'm actually living my life. Like I'm not just reacting to what's there. I'm not procrastinating because all I want to do is make a pretty Trello board and not taking action, or I'm not hustling my butt off because I feel like I need to, or I'm not stuck in just like, I just need to rest because I don't know what to do, right? Like I'm not doing any of those things. I'm strategic. So to those listening, look at next month and ask yourself, one, what do I need and how much of it? And two, do I at least have some representation of the 4 seasons in that
I
month?
love it.
And I think if you proactively go into your month that way, you're going to feel really good. You're going to feel less burnt out. And then we plop in, time for the goals.
Let me ask you a question, because I think this is gold. I love this. What's your advice for the woman listening out there that feels like they need permission? Like they need permission to have fun, or they need permission to rest. And before you answer, like I'm going to even share a real life story, like a real life situation that happened last night. So I was telling you before we went on the air how I'm in a super busy season of my life. Now my kids are grown and flown, so thankfully it's not the kid stuff that's bogging me down, but my work is really busy, all good stuff, and I run this really big community charity event that I chair, and there's a lot of moving parts, and it's coming up, and so I am like any free air quote minute I'm focusing in on that. I have been going crazy. Last night Josh was in the city because he had to speak at some event, and so I came home from a long day on site with a client, and I was like, I am not opening up my computer. I always open my computer. Now, I did check my email on my phone to make sure there was no fires that needed to be put out, or I wasn't bottlenecking anybody. But everything that was there was either junk or stuff that could totally wait. And I said, I'm not doing it, because I'm just going to sit down with my dog on the couch and watch some, like, catch up on some like mindless television, because I need rest. And there was and I know this, but there was still a little part of me that was like, well, you should be doing something. You could be doing something. Like, again, and I do this for a living, and I know, and I still, so what's your advice to the people that are out there that are the moms that are like, I can't go work out, or I can't take a night off, or I can't do this, because we've ingrained in ourselves somewhere along the way that makes us lazy or bad or entitled or whatever negative self-talk that we've been told.
Sure. I mean, listen, I'm the type of person who still struggles to feel like I can't watch TV unless I'm folding laundry, right? Like it's there, right? Like that is me. Like, and I know this about myself. So there's a couple of things you said I want to point out, and then I'm going to give you some tips. But at first is the word should. So we have this phrase in my community, and it's stop shoulding on yourself, because the word is should, right? The thing is, should is a word that comes from a limiting belief that maybe didn't start with you. And so when you find yourself saying the word should, I want you to pause and ask yourself, whose voice is this? Like, why should I do this? Maybe you learned as a kid that you're more worthy when you do this, or maybe you always had to do this, or your expectation here. And listen, the voice could be something you actually want to be doing. But I think for me, if I'm going back to the laundry TV example, it's like, I should be doing this because I've been told that, like, if I rest, like, then I'm lazy, right? Like maybe that's like something I heard from my parents or something like that. Like, get off your butt, like you have to help and do stuff. And so in my head, I feel like I'm lazy when I'm not doing anything. Okay, I've identified this. So I think the first step is the awareness of, is this really my voice, and why should I do this? And there's so much mindset work that needs to like happen, I think, there. And one of the things I like to encourage people to do is I call them in progress affirmations, because look, I love a good affirmation, but I find that the struggle I have and moms have with the affirmations is, yes, they're future paced, but they're so far fetched that our brain is like, yeah, no, that's not true. Like, I'm a millionaire. And your brain's like, no, friend, you're not. And it like fights against it. So I go back to this author example. When I was at the same with Mike, he was like, say it, like, I'm an author. And I was like, I'm an author, right? Because I didn't believe it. And so I left thinking I could be an author. And this is actually when this framework came up, because I was like, all right, so I really don't feel like an author right now, but I would love to become one. Because I tell my moms all the time, like, as much as I care about your goals, they're important. I was like, I just care about who you become on the way to your goals. Like, that's really what is important. And so what I started to do was these in progress affirmations. And I would say things like, I'm working to become an author. every time I write, I'm closer to becoming an author, right? And now I was at the doctor the other day and she was like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, I'm an author. And I was like, I'm an author. That just happens now. It becomes. So go to this example. I do not need to earn my rest. I am permitted to have time for me. I am worthy when I stop. Like, start saying those types of things, because if you just go to like, yes, you must take all of Saturday off and take a bubble, like your brain doesn't believe it and you don't believe it.
Right.
So start there. And then let's be practical. I'll give you some of the mindset, but let's be practical. 15 minutes. So if you're someone who's like, I don't have any rest anywhere, but I feel guilty because my kids need me and everyone's calling and the dishes are there. Listen, my dishes are still sitting in there from breakfast, but I know I'm going to get to them later. And so start with 15 minutes. Tell yourself, today this whole week, I'm just going to take 15 minutes to do one thing that I consider rest. It could be walking outside. It could literally be watching a show, reading, whatever you consider that. Take a 15-minute power nap, start there. And then next week, I teach a concept in the book called routine stacking. Stack it up. Next week, can I find, okay, that was 50, maybe even 15 minutes once a week, if that's where your baseline is, if that's where you need to start, and then grow it. Okay, now I'm going to do 15 minutes 3 times a week, and then get to the place where it's every day, and then move it to 30 minutes and a little bit more until it fits for what you need. And along that way, going, I guess, looping back to where we started, it grows the confidence and the belief system. And it actually will rewire synapses in your brain to believe that you can do these things and that it's acceptable. And you will start to change the way you think about rest. And it happens in 15-minute chunks. It happens in small steps.
You'll see the progress. And I feel like a lot of times, whether this is a workout plan or a diet or decluttering, whatever, or trying to pay off debt, it's all great in theory. But it's when you start to see, oh, wait, I am losing weight, or I am building more muscle, or I do have more money in my bank account, or whatever that fill in the blank is, then you start to have more buy-in. Because I think for a lot of people, again, we're burnt out. We are overwhelmed. We have all of these things. And this allows you to start to chip away to see the progress. And then once you see it, that helps continue that motivation. Because again, motivation alone, and I talk a lot, I teach about motivation because of the Enneagram, but motivation alone is not gonna, me wanting to lose weight or have a bigger bank account or whatever it is not enough. You have to couple that with behavior and strategy.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
So I love it. Okay. So because I know we're tight on time, so I could talk to you about this all day, but I know for hours, where can people go to learn more, buy the book, find you, join your community, all the things?
Yeah, sure. So the Purpose Driven Mom show is my podcast. So obviously if you're listening, you're a podcast listener. So come on over and hang there with me.
Yep.
You can find me on Instagram at a Purpose Driven Mom. And if you go to the 15minuteformula.com/book, you can link up to get the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, but there's also a workbook I made that's free, even if you don't get the book. And inside of it, I took this whole principle and I broke the book down on how you could read it 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week to finish it so that it doesn't just sit on your shelf. So there's tons of really good resources inside the book.
Love it, love it, love it. All right. We're going to, and of course, we'll put links to all of this in our show notes. We're going to take our last quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put Cara in the hot seat for our wrap-up questions. So sit tight. All right, Cara, this has been so much fun. So I don't remember if I asked this question of you the last time, because I started it, but I think you may have been on beforehand. So we always have a few questions that we ask all of our guests. So the first question that we ask is the book question. Did I ask you the book question? I don't remember.
I think so, but that was like a year ago. I'm a different person.
I can't even remember. Okay. So the question for our new listeners is, what is a book? And it could be something that you currently read. It could be something from the past, but something that's like a go-to book that you're like, this is great. I either come back to it myself or I refer it to other people that might be needing something. And I'm sure people are going to be using your book in our example. But give us a good tip for some reading.
Yes. Okay. So I'll go productivity based this time. I don't remember what I said last time, but
I have to look it up. I don't remember.
Yeah. So I'm going to say The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. It was the very first personal growth book I have ever read. And it was actually what started me into this concept, because he talks about kind of the basis a little bit of the 15-minute formula. And it's using 10-minute wins to get
Okay.
started. And the concept of basically like, you know, a flywheel like goes super, super slow. And then as you get it to the top, it starts to move fast. And that when you compound things together, you can see progress. And that was the first book anyone ever recommended to me when I got started 10 years ago with personal growth. And it changed my life.
I love it. Oh, good. Cause I have not heard of that one. So nobody's used that example. So I love that. That's awesome. And then this, I know I asked you because I ask all of our guests from day one in this season of your life. I'm sure this has changed. Where do you feel the most organized and where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess? And this could be physically, it could be calendar wise, funny, simple, whatever.
Okay, so where I feel the most organized actually is we're going to Disney World for Thanksgiving, and I've used the Learn, Plan, Do system to prepare for our trip, and I feel like on top of it. We bought our tickets already. We've got our savings down. I have a travel agent I'm working with. I've got the Trello board organized, and so I feel really good. And this trip isn't until November, but I didn't want it to pop up and all of a sudden all this stuff happened because then I wouldn't enjoy the planning process. And so that is surprisingly where I feel most excited and organized. Hot mess wise, I'm sure this was probably my answer last time. When it comes to meal planning, I don't know what it is. I just can't get it together.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? It's so funny that you say that. And I'll have to go back and listen to what you said on the last time. So when you mentioned about your freezer meals, have you ever met Carolyn Fossil? And she's got the blog. Okay. I'm going to connect you. She's got to be, you have to have her on your show. She's amazing. She was a guest on our show and her website is Olive Youll. And so, and she has a podcast also, Olive Youll. She's awesome. And she wrote a book called Prep, Cook, Freeze. I'm trying to think, right. And it's all about, and it's got, I want to say she's like more paleo based, but it's talking about how she does meal planning and prep and freezer stuff. And she's awesome. You will love her. She's great.
Oh, I'll have to check her out.
And so I will, but when you said that about your freezer planning.
Yeah. And sometimes listen, when I had that urgency, baby is coming, must do it. I'm good. We work well with urgency, but when there's no self-created urgency of like, yeah, well, we're just going to keep eating. I'm like, okay. And then sometimes I get into great groups. I make a whole monthly meal plan. I feel good about it. And then I don't stick with the system. And when the system fails, it fails us. Also, I can't cook. I said this, I think already once. And because I can't cook, I think it makes it really hard because I just don't know what to make. Like everyone has their family favorites. And I'm like, I don't know, chicken nuggets. Like I really can't cook. It's bad over here. So I will check her out because I need
Yes, I will introduce you guys. Well, and I want to say, I used to be so much better at meal planning when my kids were living at home and at school, because I do enjoy cooking and I like that. I like to cook for people. It's like, I would say food's my love language. Being empty nesting, and Josh is a vegan, cooking's hard for two people. And when one of them doesn't eat, and so I'm like, all right, I cook in parts. I grill vegetables. I make a chicken for myself, some tofu, like it's boring. It's like, wah, wah, wah. So it's more of a chore than it is something fun. So anyway, I love it. Cara, I love you. You're the best. Thank you. We literally turned this episode around in under a week. I was like, we need to get you on, and your people said we've got one day, and I was like, perfect, let's make it happen. So,
yes, well, thank you. I literally could talk to you for hours. And Laurie, maybe we'll put this out there. Me and Laurie are going to meet up this summer.
Yes,
we're just putting it out there. Everyone hear us. I feel like we said it on the last one, but like for real this time.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. If this is your first time tuning into our show, thank you so much for being here. Make sure you click the like, subscribe, follow button wherever you are. We're on YouTube, every podcast streaming platform app that you can find. Follow me on social media. If you have a question, a topic that you want to learn about, something that you want to, a guest that you want us to have, let us know. I'm at Simply Be Organized. Just shoot us a message, and we'll be back next week with another episode of This Organized Life. Until then, peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love by sharing it with your friends. And if this is your first time tuning in, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so that you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. Head on over to YouTube and make sure that you follow us there as well. We record interviews, videos, and conversations with all of our guests. And again, if you want to learn more about our product offerings, feel free to visit us at simplybeorganized.com, where you can connect with me.